The quiet town of Pine Creek, Oregon seemed perfect from the outside. Nestled between ancient forests and mountain views, it boasted about its low crime rate and tight-knit community. But beneath this peaceful facade, a monster wore a badge, and his own daughter would be the one to bring him down. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. When Emma Anderson found her boyfriend's blood on her father's police jacket, she never imagined it would lead to exposing Pine Creek's most horrific serial killer, the very man who had sworn to protect the town, Sheriff Robert Anderson, her father, the man who had taught her right from wrong. The story begins in the fall of 2022, when Emma Anderson returned to Pine Creek after completing her third year studying criminal justice at Evergreen State University. At 22, Emma was smart, determined, and carried the quiet confidence of someone who had grown up around law enforcement. Her father, Sheriff Robert Anderson, had served as Pine Creek's top lawman for nearly 15 years. His campaign posters, showing his stern but trustworthy face against the backdrop of the Cascade Mountains, had become a fixture around election time. "My dad was like a celebrity in Pine Creek," Emma later told investigators. "People would stop him for pictures at the supermarket. Kids would wave at his patrol car. The town council practically gave him whatever budget he asked for. No one questioned Sheriff Anderson." Emma had grown up idolizing her father, following in his footsteps by pursuing a career in law enforcement. Her childhood bedroom still displayed the photos of them at the shooting range, her first ride-along, the time he let her wear his badge for career day. But distance and education had given her perspective. The criminal psychology courses at Evergreen had opened her eyes to the power dynamics in small towns, the potential for abuse when authority goes unchecked. She returned that fall with plans to complete an internship at the county prosecutor's office, building her resume before graduation. What she didn't plan on was meeting Jason Miller. Jason was 26, a transplant from Seattle who had taken a job at the Pine Creek Gazette as a crime reporter. In a town where the biggest stories were usually missing pets and zoning disputes, Jason stood out with his ambitious ideas and city perspective. He had moved to Pine Creek following a promising lead on a series of disappearances across rural Oregon that larger papers had ignored. "There's a pattern here that nobody's connecting," he told Emma during their first meeting at the Timber Lodge, the only decent coffee shop in town. 7 people gone over 12 years, all from different small towns within a 100-mile radius, all cases gone cold. Emma was immediately drawn to Jason's intelligence and passion for justice. Their relationship developed quickly, bonding over true crime podcasts and discussions about criminal psychology. Within weeks, they were inseparable. Sheriff Anderson noticed. "My dad was weird about Jason from day one," Emma recalled. "At first I thought it was just normal dad stuff, being protective. But there was something else there. He would ask strange questions about Jason's work, what stories he was, and pursuing who his sources were. The first red flag appeared in October, when Jason mentioned he had requested police files on 2 local missing persons cases through the Freedom of Information Act. "Your father's department is stonewalling me," Jason told Emma over dinner at her apartment. "These are public records, but your dad's deputy called my editor, suggesting they reconsider my assignment." Emma confronted her father the next day at the family home, a sprawling property just outside town limits that her mother had left to them when she died of cancer 8 years earlier. "It's procedure, Emmy," Sheriff Anderson explained, using her childhood nickname. "We can't have every journalist digging through active investigations. But they're cold cases, Dad. Years old. No case is ever truly cold in my department." His tone had shifted, carrying an edge Emma hadn't heard before. "That boyfriend of yours needs to understand how things work in small towns. We handle things differently here." Emma, left unsettled, texting Jason, maybe pause the missing persons story for now, but Jason couldn't let it go. The pattern had become his obsession. Young adults, usually newcomers to their towns with few local connections, disappearing without trace. No bodies ever found. Investigations that seemed to lose momentum suspiciously quickly. In November, Jason secured a meeting with Dr. Thomas Walker, the county medical examiner who had worked in the area for decades. Their conversation, which Jason recorded with Walker's permission, would later become crucial evidence. I've had concerns for years, Dr. Walker confided, his voice low despite them being alone in his office. In several cases, evidence was collected improperly or disappeared entirely. When I raised issues with cause of death determinations, I was overruled, always by the same authority. Sheriff Anderson, Jason asked. Walker's silence was confirmation enough. That same evening, Jason called Emma, excitement in his voice. I'm close to something big, really big. Can you meet me tomorrow at Sawyer's Point? Early, like 6 a.m.? I need to show you something. Sawyer's Point was a lookout area in the Cascade foothills, about 20 minutes outside town. Remote, but a popular spot for hikers and tourists during the day. Can't you just tell me now? Emma asked. Not on the phone. I need to show you in person. Emma agreed, concerned by the urgency in his voice. She didn't know that would be their last conversation. Jason Miller never made it to Sawyer's Point the next morning. When Emma arrived at 6:15 a.m., the lookout was empty except for Jason's blue Honda Civic parked near the trailhead. His cell phone and wallet were still inside. His camera was missing. Emma called the sheriff's department immediately. Within 30 minutes, the area was crawling with deputies, search dogs, and volunteers. Sheriff Anderson arrived, taking command of the scene with the efficiency of someone who had handled many missing persons cases. We'll find him, Emmy, he assured her, squeezing her shoulder. These forest areas can be confusing if you go off trail. He probably got turned around. But as Emma watched her father organize search parties, something felt wrong. He seemed too composed, almost rehearsed. And there was something on the sleeve of his jacket, a small dark stain that looked like blood. The search for Jason Miller continued for 3 days before officially being classified as a missing persons case. Emma threw herself into the effort, putting her criminal justice training to use, coordinating volunteers, establishing a timeline of Jason's last known movements. Late one night, returning to her father's house exhausted, she noticed his department SUV in the garage, trunk slightly ajar. Inside was Jason's missing camera wrapped in a plastic evidence bag, unmarked. Emma's world collapsed around her. With shaking hands, she examined the camera, finding photos of remote forest locations, close-ups of disturbed earth, what looked like a freshly dug shallow grave. The final photos showed a patrol car partially visible through trees, her father's unit number clearly displayed. I felt like I couldn't breathe, Emma later testified. Everything I believed about my father, about my life, came crashing down in that moment. I knew what I had to do, but I also knew no one would believe me, not about Sheriff Anderson. I needed proof. Emma took the memory card from the camera, replacing it with a blank one from her own equipment. She returned the camera exactly as she had found it, then drove straight to her best friend Rachel Wilson's apartment, the only person she trusted completely. You need to go to the state police, Rachel urged after Emma showed her the photos. With what? Photos of dirt and a patrol car? It's not enough, and if I'm wrong... Emma couldn't finish the sentence, the alternative too painful to consider. And if you're right, your boyfriend is dead, and your father killed him. That night, Emma made the hardest decision of her life. She called Detective Sarah Martinez of the Oregon State Police, a woman she had met during a university career fair. Martinez agreed to meet her at a diner in the neighboring county, away from her father's jurisdiction. Detective Martinez reviewed the photos with a grim expression. This is concerning, but you're right. It's not enough for a warrant. We need more. Tell me what to do, Emma said, her resolve hardening with each passing hour. The plan they formulated was dangerous. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Emma would wear a wire, return to normal life, and try to get her father to incriminate himself. She would search the house for additional evidence when safe to do so. This isn't like the movies, Martinez warned. This is your father, a respected law enforcement officer. If he discovers what you're doing, Emma nodded, understanding the unspoken threat. He's not who I thought he was. And if he hurt Jason, if he hurt others, I need to know. For the next 2 weeks, Emma lived a double life. She continued participating in the search for Jason, attended her internship at the prosecutor's office, and had dinner with her father. Most evenings, all while wearing a wire, she searched his home office when he was at work, photographed documents, and checked the garage and storage areas for evidence. Sheriff Anderson seemed to grow more relaxed as the search for Jason lost momentum. Other cases demanded attention, volunteers dwindled, and the media moved on. Only Emma remained publicly dedicated to finding answers. 18 days after Jason's disappearance, Emma found a locked cabinet in her father's basement. Using skills learned from lockpicking videos she'd watched for her criminology course, she managed to open it. Inside were 7 folders, each labeled with initials and dates stretching back 12 years. Each contained driver's licenses, personal items, and photographs of the missing people Jason had been investigating. There was also a map marked with 7 locations in the national forest, all within a 50-mile radius of Pine Creek. And most damning of all, Jason's press badge, stained with dried blood. Emma photographed everything, careful to leave the cabinet exactly as she had found it. That night at dinner, her hands trembling beneath the table, she decided to push for information. "The state police called today," she lied, watching her father's reaction closely. "About Jason's case. They're sending a team to Sawyer's Point again, with ground-penetrating radar." Sheriff Anderson's fork paused halfway to his mouth. "That's so. Waste of resources, if you ask me." His voice was steady, but Emma noticed the tension in his jaw, the slight narrowing of his eyes. "They should check with me before entering my jurisdiction. It's technically state land, Dad. They don't need your permission." He set down his fork. "When are they coming?" "Tomorrow morning, early." After dinner, Emma texted Detective Martinez. He took the bait, following him tonight. Sheriff Anderson left the house at 11:30 p.m., taking his personal truck rather than his patrol vehicle. Emma followed at a safe distance, having disabled the tracker on her own car that her father had installed for her safety years ago. The truck headed into the Cascade foothills, taking Forest Service roads that became increasingly remote. Emma maintained visual contact while staying far enough back to avoid detection, her headlights off when possible, navigating by moonlight. After nearly an hour of driving, the truck turned onto an unmarked dirt road. Emma parked at the junction, continuing on foot, with only her phone's GPS recording her location. The wire she wore transmitted to a device in her car, recording everything. The forest was unnervingly silent as she followed the path, guided by occasional glimpses of flashlight beam ahead. After 20 minutes, she heard the sound of digging. Crouching behind a fallen log, Emma watched as her father, illuminated by portable work lights, dug frantically at what appeared to be a shallow grave. Nearby, a tarp was spread on the ground, clearly prepared to wrap something or someone. "I know you're there, Emmy," Sheriff Anderson suddenly called out, not turning around, continuing to dig. "You always were terrible at following people. Too impatient, like your mother." Emma froze, her blood turning to ice. "Come on out, sweetheart. Let's talk about your boyfriend." His voice was calm, conversational, as if they were discussing dinner plans. When Emma didn't respond, he turned, the shovel still in his hands, his face eerily calm in the harsh, portable lights. "I did it for you, you know." He was getting too close, asking too many questions. People like him don't understand how things work in small towns. Emma stepped from her hiding place, the wire heavy against her chest. "What did you do?" to Jason. "What I had to do, what I've always done to protect this town, to protect you." He gestured to the partially excavated grave. "I was moving him. The state police showing up with radar. Had to be sure." "Like you moved the others?" Emma asked, her voice surprisingly steady. "The 7 other people who disappeared?" Sheriff Anderson's expression shifted, surprise followed by a cold calculation. "You've been in my things." "Why, Dad? These people, they never did anything to you." "They were outsiders, transients, troublemakers. No one missed them, not really." He stepped toward her. "This town needs protection from people who don't understand our ways. Your mother understood that. I thought you did too." "Jason was a good person," Emma said, backing away. "He was just doing his job." "His job?" Sheriff Anderson laughed, a hollow sound that echoed through the trees. "His job was digging up stories that should stay buried, just like those state police will do if they come here." He looked at the grave, then back at Emma. "I can't let that happen." Emma realized with horror that her father was considering adding her to his victims, the daughter who knew too much. "The state police already know," she bluffed. "I told Detective Martinez everything. About the cabinet, the files, the map. They're waiting for my signal." Sheriff Anderson studied her face, trying to determine if she was lying. In that moment of hesitation, distant voices called from the forest. "Empath." The backup team Martinez had positioned nearby after receiving Emma's text. "You're wearing a wire," Sheriff Anderson realized, his face contorting with rage. He lunged forward, grabbing for her jacket. Emma turned to run, but her foot caught on a root. As she fell, she heard the dull thud of something heavy striking. The ground beside her head, the shovel missing her by inches. Before her father could swing again, flashlight beams cut through the darkness. "Police! Drop the weapon!" Detective Martinez's voice rang out, followed by the sounds of multiple officers moving through the trees. Sheriff Anderson stood frozen, the shovel still gripped in his hands, staring down at his daughter. For a brief moment, Emma saw something like regret flash across his features. "You don't understand what I've done for this town," he said quietly, before dropping the shovel and raising his hands. The aftermath unfolded like a nightmare. Sheriff Robert Anderson, Pine Creek's respected lawman for 15 years, was arrested for the attempted murder of his daughter and the murder of Jason Miller. Based on evidence from the wire, Emma's photographs and excavations at the 7 locations marked on the map in Anderson's cabinet, authorities eventually charged him with 8 counts of first-degree murder. The victims, as Jason had suspected, were all newcomers to the area who had disappeared over the past 12 years. The town of Pine Creek reeled from the revelations. Some residents refused to believe that Sheriff Anderson could be responsible for such atrocities. Others came forward with stories of intimidation and corruption that had gone unreported for years. Deputy Thompson and 2 other officers from Anderson's department were also arrested, charged with evidence tampering and obstruction of justice. The Pine Creek Sheriff's Department underwent a complete overhaul under state supervision. Dr. Walker's testimonies about mishandled evidence and suspicious rulings in death investigations provided crucial context for the prosecution, revealing how Anderson had maintained his cover for so long. Emma Anderson testified against her father at his trial, an experience she described as having my heart torn out while the whole world watched. The evidence she had gathered, along with her recorded conversations with her father, left little room for doubt about his guilt. Robert Anderson was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He never expressed remorse, maintaining until the end that he had acted to protect Pine Creek from outsiders. Jason Miller's body was recovered from the grave site in the Cascade foothills, along with the remains of 5 other victims. 2 bodies were never found. Emma left Pine Creek after the trial, unable to remain in the town where her father's shadow loomed so large. She completed her criminal justice degree and eventually joined the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit, specializing in cases involving authority figures who abuse their power. "The hardest lesson I learned," Emma later wrote in a memoir about her experience, "wasn't that monsters exist. It's that they can be the people we love most, the ones we trust to protect us. Sometimes the badge, the uniform, the position of respect, these can be the perfect disguises." The case became known as the Pine Creek Killings, studied in criminology courses as an example of how authority and community trust can enable predators to operate undetected for years. It also highlighted the courage required when the person you're exposing is someone you love. For Emma Anderson, justice came at an unimaginable personal cost. She lost her boyfriend, her father, and her hometown in pursuit of the truth. But her actions potentially saved countless lives and brought closure to 7 families who had spent years wondering what happened to their loved ones. In the end, Emma's training in criminal justice saved her life, but it was her moral compass that gave her the strength to wear that wire, to face the monster behind the badge, and to ensure that no one else would fall victim to Pine Creek's sheriff. The trial of Sheriff Robert Anderson dominated national headlines for months. Media outlets descended upon Pine Creek, transforming the quiet Oregon town into a circus of satellite trucks and reporters. For Emma, each day in the courtroom felt like drowning in slow motion as prosecutors methodically presented the evidence she had helped gather against her own father. District Attorney Laura Chen built her case with surgical precision. The wire recordings played in court revealed not just confessions to Jason's murder, but chilling insights into Sheriff Anderson's mindset. "These people don't belong here." His voice echoed through the courtroom speakers. "They bring their city ideas, their questions. They don't understand our ways." Emma sat in the front row during these playbacks, her eyes fixed on the floor, unable to look at the father she had once adored as he sat expressionless at the defense table. The defense team, led by high-profile attorney James Calloway, attempted to paint Sheriff Anderson as a dedicated lawman whose methods had gone tragically astray. "Robert Anderson spent decades protecting Pine Creek," Calloway argued in his opening statement. His intentions, however misguided they became, were to preserve the community he loved. This defense strategy collapsed when Dr. Walker took the stand. The medical examiner's testimony revealed the methodical nature of the killings, the careful planning that went into each disappearance. "These weren't crimes of passion or necessity," Dr. Walker explained, referring to his detailed analysis of the recovered remains. Each victim showed similar patterns of restraint, torture, and execution. As the trial entered its 3rd week, an unexpected witness emerged. Meredith Collins, the owner of the timber lodge where Emma had first met Jason, approached Detective Martinez with information she had kept secret for years. "I was afraid," Meredith testified, her hands trembling as she clutched a handkerchief. "Everyone loved Sheriff Anderson. Who would believe me?" Meredith described an incident from 2018 when she had accidentally witnessed Sheriff Anderson and Deputy Thompson forcing a disoriented young man into an unmarked car behind her restaurant. When she questioned Anderson the next day, he explained it away as a drug arrest, but threatened to investigate her restaurant for health code violations if she mentioned it to anyone. The young man matched the description of Cameron Peters, Chen noted, referring to one of the victims identified from the grave sites. "Miss Collins, did Sheriff Anderson ever follow through on those threats?" "No," Meredith replied. But every time he came into the restaurant after that, he would remind me how much I relied on my business license, how easily it could be revoked. Each testimony added another layer to the picture of how Sheriff Anderson had maintained his grip on Pine Creek through a combination of charm, intimidation, and strategic alliances with key town figures. The county commissioner admitted to approving budget increases without proper oversight. The former mayor confessed to dismissing citizen complaints about the sheriff's department. Throughout it all, Emma watched the community she had grown up in fracture and realign as people were forced to reckon with the monster they had elevated to power. Some still defended him, wearing supportive t-shirts to court proceedings. Others expressed shame at their complicity through silence. "We all saw little things that didn't add up," Rachel Wilson, Emma's best friend, told reporters outside the courthouse, "but it was easier to look away. Sheriff Anderson made us feel safe, and that was worth more than asking uncomfortable questions." As the prosecution's case neared completion, Deputy Thompson accepted a plea deal, agreeing to testify against his former boss in exchange for a reduced sentence. His testimony provided the final pieces of the puzzle, revealing how they had selected victims, staged disappearances, and manipulated investigations. Sheriff Anderson had a type, Thompson explained to the stunned courtroom. People who were new to the area, asking questions, not fitting in. He called them disruptors, said they threatened our way of life. "And what about Jason Miller?" DHN asked. "Why him specifically?" Thompson glanced at Emma before answering. Sheriff Anderson was obsessed with protecting his daughter. When Miller started researching the cold cases, the sheriff said he was getting too close. But it was more than that. He hated that Miller was dating Emma, said he was filling her head with dangerous ideas, turning her against her hometown. Emma felt her chest tighten at these words. Had her relationship with Jason accelerated his death sentence? The guilt threatened to consume her. On the trial's 23rd day, Emma finally took the stand. The courtroom fell silent as she walked to the witness box, her eyes briefly meeting her father's for the first time since his arrest. She saw no remorse there, only a cold calculation that made her shudder. For 4 hours, Emma testified about discovering Jason's camera, her growing suspicions, the evidence she had uncovered, and finally, that night in the forest, when her father had nearly added her to his list of victims. Her voice remained steady, even as she described the moment when she realized the man who had taught her about justice was himself a monster. "Did you ever suspect, prior to Jason Miller's disappearance, that your father might be involved in criminal activity?" DHN asked. Emma paused, considering the question carefully. "I noticed changes over the years. My father became more paranoid about outsiders, more controlling of information. But I rationalized it as job stress. I never imagined." Her voice finally broke. "I never imagined what he was capable of." During cross-examination, Calloway tried to suggest that Emma's relationship with Jason had clouded her judgment, that she had interpreted innocent actions as sinister because of her emotional state after his disappearance. "Ms. Anderson, isn't it possible that your father was simply conducting his own investigation into Jason's disappearance? That the items you found were collected as evidence?" Emma met his gaze steadily. "If that were true, why hide the evidence in a locked cabinet in our basement instead of logging it at the department? Why lie about finding Jason's camera? Why try to kill me when I confronted him?" The defense had no satisfying answers to these questions. When the jury delivered their verdict after just 6 hours of deliberation, no one in Pine Creek was surprised. Sheriff Robert Anderson was found guilty on all counts: 8 murders, attempted murder, obstruction of justice, abuse of power, and a dozen related charges. The judge sentenced him to 8 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole. As her father was led away in handcuffs, Emma felt no closure, only a hollow emptiness where certainty had once lived. The foundations of her life had crumbled, leaving her adrift in a sea of doubt and betrayal. The aftermath brought new challenges. Journalists pursued Emma relentlessly, offering book deals and exclusive interview rights. True crime podcasts dissected every aspect of the case, often sensationalizing her role as the daughter who brought down her killer dad. Lifetime announced a movie based on her story before the trial had even concluded. Emma retreated from public view, taking a leave of absence from her studies and moving in with an aunt in Portland. The trauma manifested physically. Insomnia, panic attacks, a persistent feeling that she was being watched, even though her father was now behind bars. "I don't know who I am anymore," she confessed to Rachel during a rare phone call. "Everything I believed about my life, my family, my future, it was all built on lies." "You're still Emma," Rachel insisted. "You're still the person who stood up for what's right, even when it cost you everything." But Emma wasn't convinced. She had lost not just her father and boyfriend, but her sense of trust in her own judgment. If she had been so wrong about the person closest to her, how could she trust herself to evaluate anyone else? 3 months after the trial, Emma received an unexpected letter. The handwriting on the envelope was immediately recognizable. Her father's precise, neat script that had signed her school permission slips and birthday cards throughout her childhood. For days, the unopened letter sat on her kitchen counter, like a ticking bomb. Finally, steeling herself, Emma opened it. "Emmy," it began. The childhood nickname, now a perversion of what it had once represented. "By now you've heard all the stories, the theories, the expert opinions about what I did and why. Everyone has their version of Robert Anderson, the monster, of Pine Creek, but only you and I know the truth. I did what I did to protect our town, our way of life. Each person I removed was a threat, bringing drugs, crime, or dangerous ideas into our community. Jason Miller was digging into things that would have destroyed Pine Creek's reputation, our property values, our peace of mind. He would have dragged your name through the mud along with mine. I never expected my own daughter to betray me. The wire, the photographs, working with the state police. You became exactly what I feared, someone who puts abstract ideas of justice above loyalty to family and community. I still love you, Emmy. I always will. But I want you to understand what you've done. You didn't just send your father to prison. You destroyed the delicate balance I maintained for 15 years. Now Pine Creek will change, and not for the better. The outsiders will come, and everything we valued will disappear. Someday, you'll understand that there are no heroes or villains in this story, just people making choices to protect what they love. I chose Pine Creek. You chose Jason Miller and your ideas of right and wrong. We both must live with those choices. When you're ready to hear the full truth, come see me. There are things about your mother, about our family history, that you need to know." "Dad!" Emma read the letter 3 times before calling Detective Martinez. "He's still manipulating," Martinez said after Emma read it to her. "Creating doubt, trying to justify his actions, dangling mysterious information to regain control. Classic psychopathic behavior." Emma knew Martinez was right, yet the letter had achieved its purpose. Questions multiplied in her mind. What did her father mean about her mother? What family history was he referring to? 2 weeks later, Emma made the decision that would ultimately lead to her final realization. She would confront her father one last time. The Eastern Oregon Correctional Institution was a 4-hour drive from Portland. Emma spent the journey rehearsing what she would say, steeling herself against her father's manipulations. The visiting room was stark and institutional, metal tables bolted to the floor, uncomfortable plastic chairs, guards stationed at each corner. When Sheriff Anderson entered, Emma barely recognized him. Prison had aged him rapidly. His once commanding presence had diminished, his uniform replaced by standard-issue blue scrubs. Yet his eyes remained the same, calculating, observant, missing nothing. "Emmy," he said, sitting across from her, "I knew you'd come." "I'm not here for reconciliation," Emma stated flatly. "I want answers. What did you mean about Mom? About our family history?" Robert Anderson studied his daughter carefully before responding. "Your mother knew, about some of it at least." The statement hit Emma like a physical blow. "You're lying." "Am I? Why do you think she drank so much toward the end? Why she couldn't look me in the eye? The cancer was almost a relief for her, a way out that absolved her of making harder choices." Emma gripped the edge of the table, forcing herself to breathe evenly. If she knew, she would have stopped you. She tried in her way. Begged me to retire, to move somewhere new. But she understood what was at stake. The Anderson name means something in Pine Creek, has for generations. "What are you saying?" Her father leaned forward, lowering his voice. "Your grandfather. My father was sheriff before me. Did you ever wonder why so many people in town still talked about him with that strange mix of respect and fear? He had his own methods of maintaining order. Different times called for different measures, but the principle was the same." Emma felt sick. "You're claiming this is some kind of family tradition?" "Protection, Emmy. It's always been about protection. Some people are suited to make the hard choices others can't stomach. Your grandfather understood that. Your mother came to understand it, and deep down, so do you." "I am nothing like you," Emma whispered fiercely. "No?" Anderson smiled slightly. "The methodical way you gathered evidence against me, the patience it took to wear that wire, to pretend everything was normal while planning my downfall, the willingness to sacrifice your own father for your principles. Tell me that doesn't sound familiar." Emma stood abruptly. "This was a mistake." "Before you go," her father said, remaining seated, "check the storage unit on Riverside Drive, Unit 227. The key is in my old tackle box in the garage. There are things there you should see." Despite her better judgment, Emma found herself driving to her father's house the next day. The property had been released back to the family after the investigation concluded, though Emma hadn't been able to bring herself to sell it yet. Everything remained as it had been, preserved like a museum exhibit of her former life. The garage smelled of motor oil and cut grass. Her father's fishing gear was still organized on metal shelves, the tackle box sitting exactly where it always had. Inside, beneath trays of fishing lures and hooks, she found a small key with a numbered tag. Riverside Storage was on the outskirts of Pine Creek, a collection of identical metal units with orange doors. Unit 227 was at the back of the property, away from the office and security cameras. The key turned smoothly in the lock. Inside, Emma found a climate-controlled space containing filing cabinets, boxes of photographs, and old journals. Her father had created a meticulous archive of Pine Creek's history, newspaper clippings, dating back to the 1950s, town council minutes, police reports, personal correspondence. But what caught Emma's attention was a collection of framed photographs on the far wall. Her grandfather, James Anderson, in his sheriff's uniform at various community events spanning 3 decades. In several photos, he stood alongside town officials, breaking ground on new developments, cutting ribbons, always at the center of Pine Creek's progress. Beside these civic photographs were more disturbing images, newspaper clippings about troublemakers who had been run out of town, protest groups that had mysteriously disbanded, environmental activists who had abandoned their campaigns against local logging operations. Emma opened one of the filing cabinets and found folders organized by year. Inside were handwritten accounts of problems solved, detailed reports of intimidation, evidence tampering, and worse. Her grandfather's journal entries described a philosophy of necessary intervention to protect Pine Creek's interests. One entry from 1978 stood out: handled the situation with the environmental reporter. Dee helped clean up afterward. She's starting to understand what it means to be an Anderson. Dee, her grandmother, Diane, who had died before Emma was born. Moving through the decades of records, Emma found the transition from her grandfather's handwriting to her father's. The methods evolved, becoming more sophisticated, but the underlying philosophy remained consistent, a belief that certain people threatened Pine Creek's way of life and needed to be removed. The most chilling discovery came in a leather-bound journal from 1997, the year her parents were married. A photograph fell out, showing her mother and father at their wedding reception. On the back, in her mother's handwriting, "May God forgive us for what we protect." Emma sank to the floor of the storage unit, the evidence of 3 generations of calculated violence surrounding her. Her father's words echoed in her mind. The Anderson name means something in Pine Creek, has for generations. She had believed she was exposing a killer. Now she realized she was exposing a legacy, one that had shaped her hometown for over half a century, one that might have shaped her too, in ways she was only beginning to understand. The final realization came not as a sudden shock, but as a creeping certainty. The capacity for darkness didn't begin and end with her father. It ran through her family line like a poison, justified by a twisted sense of duty and protection. The real question was whether it ran through her as well. After securing the most damning evidence, Emma contacted Detective Martinez once more. "This goes deeper than we thought," Emma explained, showing her the journals and photographs. "My grandfather, possibly others before him, they created a system where the sheriff had absolute power, where protecting Pine Creek meant eliminating anyone who threatened their vision of it." Martinez examined the materials carefully. "This changes the historical perspective on the case, but not your father's guilt." "No," Emma agreed. "But it might explain something I've been struggling with. How an entire town could be complicit through their silence. This wasn't just about my father's crimes. This was about a culture of fear and control that spans generations." The investigation expanded, with state authorities reviewing decades of suspicious deaths and disappearances throughout the region. Cold cases were reopened, old witness statements re-examined in light of the new evidence. Pine Creek's dark history was exposed piece by piece, revealing a pattern of corruption that had allowed the Andersons to operate with impunity. 3 months later, Emma sat in Dr. Reeves's office, the therapist she had been seeing since the trial. "I've made a decision," she said. "I'm going back to school, finishing my degree." "That's positive," Dr. Reeves noted. "What changed?" "I realized something. The Anderson legacy doesn't have to be mine. My father wanted me to believe I'm just like him, methodical, willing to sacrifice others for what I believe is right. But there's a fundamental difference. He used those traits to protect himself and his power. I can use them to protect the vulnerable, to expose corruption, to create accountability." "And the guilt?" "About Jason." Emma's eyes filled with tears. "I'll carry that forever. But Jason was pursuing the truth no matter the cost. The best way to honor him is to continue that work." The following fall, Emma returned to Evergreen State University, changing her major from criminal justice to investigative journalism. She established a scholarship in Jason's name for student journalists pursuing stories about abuse of power. Her first major investigation, published in the Seattle Times, exposed how the Anderson family had maintained control over Pine Creek. For decades, through strategic alliances with business owners, selective enforcement of laws, and a carefully cultivated public image of security and prosperity, The article won national awards and led to further investigations in similar small towns across America, where powerful families operated with little oversight. When interviewed about her work, Emma often referenced what she called her final realization that the most dangerous predators aren't those who hide in the shadows, but those who stand in the spotlight, using their position and charisma to make entire communities complicit in their crimes. My father wanted me to believe that his actions were justified, that he was protecting something valuable, she explained. The truth is, he was protecting a system that gave him power. Understanding that distinction is what finally freed me from his shadow. Sheriff Robert Anderson died in prison 5 years into his sentence, taking many of his secrets with him. Emma didn't attend the funeral. Instead, she was in Washington, D.C., testifying before a congressional committee on law enforcement oversight in rural communities, turning her family's darkest legacy into the catalyst for genuine protection and justice. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.